All right. Hello. This is my video for my 10-minute reflection on the podcast. So I wrote down a lot of notes for this, so I'm going to do my best not to talk very fast as there is kind of a lot to reflect on. So yeah, let's go ahead and get started. So this was from the Managing the Future of Work podcast with Cal Newport. And I actually really enjoyed listening to this. It was really insightful, especially, we'll get to that, but from someone who is constantly going, to be able to honestly hear a different approach on that was quite interesting and eye-opening for someone like me. So yeah, he said he was a Georgetown professor and an expert on knowledge work. And I think that his insights, like I said, challenged the way. Sorry, I'm reading some notes, so if it sounds kind of written or computery, that's why. Challenged the way I think about productivity. And his main thing was how it challenges the way we think about productivity, especially in our era that is dominated by digital distractions and things like AI. So yeah, main argument or main thing I want to start out with that I wrote down was I liked the fact that it says we live in a world where being busy is often mistaken for being productive. And I think yeah, we talk about how when people say I have so much work to do, or I've been doing stuff all day from 6 a.m. to midnight, and it's how much of that work was actually something that's going to get you somewhere? I think do you want I don't know, I think some people do it to themselves, and some people, being me, because we're we believe that doing constant work will get you somewhere, and that's the key to success. And honestly, hearing that from a podcast from someone who has credentials was, I think, a sign for me, because if I am not extremely productive all day every day, I will literally flip out. I feel I'm gonna be a failure in life, and I hate that that's how things are, or that's how we're conditioned to be. But I especially think at this university alone, everyone around me is always going, and it's such a thing that you can get caught up in, that you have to be better than everyone else. So yeah, he kind of advocates for slow productivity in this podcast. So something, I have some notes that have a more long-term impact, things that are meaningful work, and prioritize deep focus. And that was really eye-opening to hear. But then again, I thought about my own day, and I was I don't even know if there's anything I could cut out of my day. Because yes, some of it's busy work, but I have multiple jobs, I have clubs I'm involved in, I have sorority stuff I'm involved in, I have my social life, I have schoolwork, that's the main thing, and it's I don't even know what I could cut out. So maybe, but then I'm how do I even cut out anything to prioritize slow productivity? But I do think I'll go in a study room, and I just start knocking out these assignments that aren't due for so long, versus prioritizing something that's due sooner, and I should probably be spending more time on. So yeah, another note I have is that busyness is mistaken for productivity. That's a super major issue that was highlighted in the podcast, in terms of just modern work culture. And yeah, I think it says many professionals, or people in the work culture feel pressured to be constantly available, responding to people all the time, having all these office hours, rather than focusing on quote unquote high value tasks. But I don't know. So he argued that knowledge workforce, say, lacks the clear lines of productivity, so it can make it easy for things like distractions to take over. But I really liked, he said that instead of marking our success by how many hours we work, we should focus on the results of that work and the impact of that work. And I think that's really important. But I also do think, like, as a counter argument, that, like, some people do have to work long hours to see, like, it results in impact. Like, you can't just work 2 hours a day and say, like, oh, well, I did high class meaningful work, because it's not always going to be like that, I think. It could be, for sure, but I think that some people, like, I don't know, depending on what they're doing, like curing cancer or something, like, you do need to put in those hours of work. So yeah, like, it says here, like, how a researcher might get caught up in administrative tasks rather than focusing on groundbreaking discoveries. So I don't know what I just said about curing cancer. Like, I guess you could put in the hours and things like that, but they might be putting in the hours to the wrong things. So I think that's, something else to focus on rather than a counter argument. So yeah, deep work, things that are meaningful. So I don't know, maybe he's more trying to argue that, like, well, I think he is, like, he's more trying to argue that, like, let's put our hours in, if you're gonna put all these hours into the day, do it with tasks that are worthwhile. So I guess he's not exactly saying that, like, having all these hours of work is a bad thing. But, the constant pressure of all this leads, like, if you were just going and going and going and going and going all the time, that leads to burnout, low mental health, low output, low effort. And that's something I've experienced for sure. This semester, I've just been going and going, and, like, I feel like I don't put my all into everything sometimes because I just don't even know how to anymore. So yeah, being busy does not equal effective. And then, there's AI's, like, place in that, which I feel like we always talk about AI, but it is, like, I'm not saying that like a bad thing. I think it's important to talk about. It's evolving, and I think it's a tool that could be used, like, as a job replacement for things like Busywork. That way we can focus human work on things that are, like, more important and that AI can't replace. So yeah, I think that we need to, like, make strategies, or people need to make strategies of prioritizing, like, the deep work over, like, these low tasks, and also just, like, making boundaries between, work life and home life, that way we don't, like, get burnout, and just, like, things like that. So in order to, like, reduce stress, things like that. But I also think that can be a hard shift to kind of make, for sure, from someone who is constantly going and going and going. So I don't know. So he talked about, like, a shift towards sustainable productivity, or something that's, like, where workers focus on quality over quantity. So, like, companies moving towards goals, and, like, goals that will have an impact rather than doing busy work, which is crazy to me that, this is even a thing. I guess I just didn't, like, realize how much of people's work might be, like, busy work, when, like, we have to have, like, functioning companies, and, like, companies making a difference to, like, have an impact in society and, like, have an impact on our world. So I don't know, like, this is something I think everybody should be listening to, because it was really eye-opening for me, even as, like, a college student. So, when we talk about how AI can be good and bad, but I especially think as in terms of playing a role of, like, things that can be replaceable, like busy work, like checking your email, things like that, that's able to provoke thoughtful work for, humans. So I think that's something really important for us to do. So yeah, I think AI, it has that potential to improve our, like, work-life balance and things like that. And we could, have realistic expectations and have positive outcomes. And, like, I just really think, so this podcast just really helps me rethink productivity as a whole, and maybe kind of step back from my own life and think, like, oh, that's, like, a busy task. Like, I could be focusing on something like this that has more of a meaningful impact, or, sustainable practice, like he said, like the quality over quantity. So yeah, I don't know. I just think it was a really good podcast, and I really enjoyed it. And yeah, all right. Well, thanks for listening. Bye-bye.